live. Okay, nimefreeze turning well. Niko live, eh? Yes, I'm live. Wait. Uh, now I've put it. The whole world can see me now. Happy New Year, guys. I don't know if there's anyone here. So, first things first. Kawa ni rafiki yangu unajanua kitabu, mi na catch feelings. Yes, please. By Finding Eden, excellent book, well written, great book. If you don't have your copy, kuna shida kubwa sana. Finding Eden, great book, by the way. So get a copy. But that's not why I'm here. We've got work to do. So I'm waiting for the 3 Dot crew or anybody to confirm they are there. As I switch this on to do an audio recording. Okay, excellent. Are you guys there? Am I live? All right, cool. That said, let's start. I want to quickly set the tone really for what's gonna happen moving forward. I know the holidays have been interesting time. Hi Mumbi Njoroge. Here's Mambo. Happy New Year. Aya, here's hatujaongea this year. Yeah. Oliver Kwapa, Mumbi Njoroge, naona umejoin the 3 Dot crew. Now, let me tell you, first confession. If there's a job I don't like, it is teaching. It's teaching because human beings are stubborn and they don't learn and they keep us over here repeating stuff over and over again. So I'm doing this with great pain. Still wanna be on holiday. That's it. Oh yeah, it is better. Sorry. My camera was dirty a little bit. Had to clean it. So high purity. So let's do this. Let's do this. I want to set the tone for the season. The holidays have just ended, and I'm sure a lot of introspection, but a lot of challenges have come your way. Now, I've titled this sermon. I've titled it "Mountains Are for Kings." Hi, Miss Muniva Sasa Roda. I've titled it "Mountains Are for Kings," and then I've said journey on. Now, there's a reason why I've titled it this way, and allow me to do the philosophy before I do the scripture. I rarely do this, but just allow me to say what is on my heart. Now, if you look at the journey of Moses and the journeys of many people, you will notice that Moses keeps journeying to mountains, okay? And he goes up the mountain to speak with God. He goes up the mountain to see Canaan. He goes up the mountain quite a number of times. Now, I want you to understand what mountains mean in the journey, in any journey in the olden world. You see, a mountain is a huge landmark. Okay, if you've been near a mountain, you will notice that you can see it for many miles around. You can see it; it's almost omnipresent at a certain distance. And if you're, for example, going towards Tanzania on the Loitoktok route, or you are in Mount Kenya, in fact, any Mapendo, sasa, you if you're ever in those places, you notice that you can see the mountain from anywhere. But here's the funniest thing, that a lot of the time use the mountain as a guide and go to Nanyuki, go to Embu, go to different places, but it's still there. But it takes a precious few people who can actually go up the mountain. And as you go up the mountain, certain things become clear. Now, what becomes clear in a natural perspective is you can see where you've come from. You can see it laid out behind you, and you can also see where you're going. You can also see the future. And a lot of the time when Moses comes down, he comes down prophetic. He comes down able to tell what is going to happen. This is both the physical nature, but also the symbolism of a mountain. And therefore, a lot of the time, God puts signposts. Hey, Bwana Kitenge Mambo. God puts signposts in your way by way of mountains. And therefore, in your life, there are mountains that you need to climb. Now, when you climb these mountains, you're able to see your past in a sense that makes sense, but you're also able to see where you're going. And Moses represents this quite a bit. But notice a few things that you leave Egypt, and I'll explain briefly what Egypt means. You go into the wilderness and you meet mountains, and in those mountains, God speaks to you, and then you move on to the promised land. Yet, even in the promised land, there remains, hey, Lawi Mambo, there remains a mountain called Zion, and still that mountain you must ascend it. And how to ascend Zion is another sermon we will do another day, because Zion is accessed through the water. It's a very interesting analogy, but I do not have the time. It is not the time to discuss the analogies of Zion, because the small mountains huko, uh, like Sinai bado zinatusumbua. So let's not talk about the big one. Let's talk about the small ones. Okay. So in your life, and this is what I want to explain. Many years ago, those of you who followed Masterclass, we started a journey. And that journey was to leave Egypt behind. Now, what Egypt symbolizes is not just the slavery of God's people, but it symbolizes a mentality, a religion, a way of thinking that keeps you in slavery. And how do you know you are in slavery? You know you are in slavery when you produce, but someone else eats. This is how you know you're in slavery. You are in a cotton field, as the black Americans were for many years, and you produce the cotton, but someone else eats the profit. It's a common phenomenon even today. In fact, I dare say much of Africa is in slavery. How do I know? Because we produce the tea, but someone else makes the profit from the tea. But I digress. There's also the issue of the journey of leaving the religion you knew into the truth of God. Now, this is a more difficult journey. This is, for example, the journey of realizing that you can't live your life without forgiveness. You can't live your life without generosity. You can't live your life without loving others. You can't live your life without sacrificing for others. Now, these are basic fundamental teachings in your journey. Now, each of these teachings represents a mountain. So let me explain what I mean by a mountain. So, for example, if you're taught generosity, there will come a time when you need to be generous, when you need to actually be kind to someone and go out of your way to help someone. Okay? And this is what ends up happening. What ends up happening is this: because you are not used to generosity, then that mountain of generosity, when it shows up in your life, it shakes you. And it shakes you a lot. And you go through this period where you feel like you are literally dying from generosity. Okay? or you just feel like I can't be generous. Now, if you're to climb that mountain of generosity, then you will be able to see what the next step is. And the next step could be forgiveness, the next step could be patience. At the end of the day, you must learn to climb your mountains. Now, out of the multitude, and this is where a lot of people are, and I want to correct this. If you read the book of Exodus, when they come to the mountain, okay, they say something that a lot of you say that is the most dangerous thing you can say. And what they said is, we don't want to meet God. We don't want to have this conversation with God. Let Moses go and let Moses see for us, and whatever he says we will do. And that's where a lot of people are, that you are afraid to climb the mountain. You want to hear about it. It's good to hear. You want to hear about forgiveness. You want to hear about this new world where grace is real. You want to hear it, but you don't want to climb the mountain. Now, these are the people I want to speak to, people who've heard truth but refuse to live it. Now, your kingship is not based on what you hear like this. Like I've always taught you, when the Bible says, and when Jesus says, let he who has an ear hear, that term here is not the English term here. When you tell a Jew that you've heard, what you're simply saying is, if he tells you pick up your phone, all right, you have not heard until the phone is picked up. So until the activity is done, you have not heard. All right? Until the activity is done, you've not heard. So the problem is this, that every instruction you hear from God is a mountain. It is a mountain. Whether it's forgiveness, it's a mountain. That's why it's hard for you to climb that mountain. Whether it's generosity, it is a mountain, which is hard. Why it is hard for you to climb that mountain. But trust you me, you will not see the promised land until you climb the mountain, because you cannot see where you're going until you obey God. Please underline whatever you want to do that statement. Let me prove it to you. For as long as Jonah was running away from God, he couldn't hear him. He could not hear him. And this is what we miss. And this is how God works, okay? So God's last instruction to you, the last teaching you had that you took to heart, that's your mountain. And if you ignore your mountains to that extent, your journey is hindered. You see, what people don't understand is they come and say, oh, wow, my life seems to be stuck in the same place. Why am I not moving forward? You're not moving forward because you've not left your dependency. You've left your parents' house, you've left your mother's house, you're on your own, but you're still looking for mommy and daddy to take care of you. You don't want to stand on your own, right? You don't want to put your own feet down. So for as long as you've not conquered the mountain of independence, you remain struggling the same way. You understand? So please get me correctly. These games you keep playing, that you keep hearing God telling you things and you say deep, oh wow, that's awesome. Oh my goodness, my eyes are open, and you do nothing about it. Wewe kwisha. Okay? Wewe kwisha. And let me tell you, this is a difficult thing, because some of you have learned very hard things. For example, some of you have learned that heaven is not God's home, and we know it is not, because he created it. So where was he living before? But you still want to believe in your old ideology. So in your mind, the mountain of doctrine has not flipped. So you know things, but you believed. Uliniona Mlolongo? Jesus, when have I been to Mlolongo? Guy, have I been when? Hi Lucy, sijakuwa Mlolongo in a long time. Utanikumbusha uliniona wapi? Yeah? So it is very simple. Okay? If your mind is not changing also about the things you learn, okay, and you still want to hold back to Egyptian practices, you're not still climbing the mountain. And as long as you don't climb these mountains, my dear brothers and sisters, yani sijui niwaexplainie aje, you're going to be in a whole lot of trouble. Because if you if you know the principles of forgiveness and never breaking fellowship, and you want to continue breaking fellowship, you will stay at that mountain ukizunguruka tu, unaitwa kuzunguruka, yes, kuzunguka same place for so long, and you'll be stuck. Mi sikuelewi kabisa. I don't understand. So please understand that the person who meets God, and trust you me, God will meet you at your next mountain. God, listen, I don't know how to put this to you in perspective. Do you notice that every time God speaks to people in the Old Testament, they're either supposed to do something or they've done something? Have you ever noticed that? It's only us New Testament people who go and we go to a meeting and we say, oh my God, God was there. I felt him. I felt him. I felt him. And then you have nothing to do. Have you ever noticed that? Yani God has no time other than to make you feel dizzy. My dear friends, let me tell you, it doesn't matter what you're going through. The test you're going through is simply testing whether you will apply what you know. Okay, let me repeat that. The mountain, the challenges, the problems that you have, all of them are simply testing whether you will apply what you know. You want financial breakthrough? Do you apply what you know? You want your relationships to work? Do you apply what you know? In other words, are you the kind of person who changes under pressure? Are you the kind of person who, oh, this is too big for me, let me apply the ways of Egypt, where you left? Now, let me read something for you. Kwa kitabu, I want us to go to Judges. I want to show you something. Judges chapter 6. Now, notice something. Judges chapter 6, I want to start from verse 1. But the Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian for 7 years. All right, so God gave them to Midian. I want you to notice what Midian did. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel. Because of Midian, Israelites made themselves dens which are in the mountains, and caves and the strongholds. So because of Midian, the Israelites made places to hide in the mountains, and they hid in the caves as well, and they created strongholds. They created places to protect themselves. Now, I want you to notice something. For whenever Israel had sown their seed, the Midianite and the Amalekite and the people of the east came up against them, and they would encamp against them. Yeah, James Karibu. And they would encamp against them and destroy the crops as far as Gaza, and leave no nourishment for Israel, and no ox or sheep or donkey. For they came up with their cattle and their tents, and they came like locusts for multitude. Both they and their camels could not be counted. So they wasted the land as they entered it. And Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites. And the Israelites cried to the Lord. Okay? Sound familiar? Yeah, I know things are hard, right? Don't worry. Tunaenda mahali. So they cried to the Lord because of Midian. The Lord sent a prophet to the Israelites who said to them, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I brought you up from Egypt, brought you forth out of the house of bondage. And I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians and out of the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you, and gave you their land. And I say to you, I am the Lord your God. Fear not the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice. I want you to underline, fear not the gods of the Amorites. Fear not. The term used here is very interesting. It does not say don't worship. It says don't fear the gods of the Amorites. Now, I want you to pause and think, what does this mean? The reason many of you will quit this journey is because you fear, number one, the religion you come from. You fear it. You fear speaking the truth. You fear living the truth. Number two, you fear persecution. You fear paying a price for what you believe. Number three, you fear problems. Hautaki shida. You want to live at peace. Peace in quotes. And so you never conquer your mountain because you have decided to avoid it. You have decided you're not going to bother with it. You have decided that it is too much trouble. So God sent Midian against you. And you're being devastated because of what you fear. What you fear, the beliefs of other people will cost you. You fear that if you forgive people, how they'll use you. You fear if you're generous to people, how you will be broke. You fear. And you've forgotten that where you are now, the house you are in now, the career you're in now, the financial prosperity you have now, God gave it to you despite the circumstances you were in. He literally broke you out from where you were. He delivered you from bondage. But now here you sit afraid of bondage again, afraid of the enemies God has defeated on your behalf before. I don't know whether I'm speaking English. So many of you have not tackled mountains because you're afraid. Now, because of your fear, so let me give you the answer God told me to give you, and I can see my comments umenyamaza, but I'm going to say the truth anyway. The reason why you're struggling today is because you've not walked up to that mountain and climbed it. The reason why you're like, why can't I hear God, is because you've not climbed that mountain and conquered it. Because we can't see. And so we find ourselves in this situation where God is telling you, because of what you've been afraid of, I have sent you the Midianite to encamp, that every time there's a little bit of a crop about to grow, they come and eat all of it. Man. Verse 11. And I hope we are together. Please tell me if we are together over here. Kana jiongelesha nijue. Now the angel of the Lord, capital A, came and sat under the oak at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon was, now notice, Gideon was beating wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. I want you to think about something. He was beating wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianite. I want you to think, what does that mean? Sad saying. At least tuko na mapendo, yani Judy, tuko pamoja. Now let me tell you this. Let me tell you what it means. It means that the Midianite did not mind if you made wine and got drunk. Did not bother him. It is when you made bread that it bothered him. In other words, when you're doing stupid stuff, when you're doing things that can't feed you, can't change your life, the Midianite is okay. So Gideon, for him to survive, what does he do? He knows that when people press wine, the Midianite is not bothered. Okay. Let me give you an analogy. You know, Jesus said you can't put old wine into new wineskins. Then he said something interesting. He said that no one who is drunk of the old wine desires new wine. In other words, the Midianite is not bothered if you're drunk with old wine. If you want to go back to old basic beliefs, want to keep fighting Satan at the middle of the night, you want to keep paying tithe, you want to keep doing the things that you think keep you safe so you can hide from the Midianite. Sound familiar? Trying to squeeze out nourishment in the wrong place. Yeah, man. I'm sorry I had to bring this to you, but you guys require vibocos. Ignoring the principles you've learned to do the old things you used to do. So as long as you're drunk with nonsense, no one bothers you. No one bothers you. Until God sends an angel to speak to you. Oliver, tunaenda mahali. Tuko sawa? Okay. I have one person, so I have one witness. The other imagery is this. There is a place for making bread that feeds the nation. In other words, there's a place, and we know Jesus is the bread, and when we meet and break the word, we're breaking the bread. And one of the things that is wrong is that when the bread is being made where the wine is being made, it's an interesting allegory of a church. I put it to you in perspective. The confusion is this in the church today, that where there is supposed to be bread, there is wine. Where there is supposed to be wine, there is no bread. Let me explain. The word of God, the water that Jesus had, is supposed to be put in vessels so that when it's poured out as wine to give gladness to people. In other words, wine is given out. The vessel pours out wine. Therefore we sing, he poured in the oil and the wine, the kind that refreshes my soul. Found me bleeding and dying in the Jericho road. So that's why we sing that. That the wine is supposed to heal, it's poured out. But the bread is supposed to sustain. And so there's confusion in the church. And that's why, if I was to give you an example of the church today, much of the church is in support of Trump. And they prophesied about this thing. They're confused. Their bread is coming from their wine is doing, it's crazy. And so they're confused. It's a confused church. And the problem with the confused church is this, that once again, Midian comes and eats everything. And that's where a lot of you are. Now, the church is confused, but I'm supposed to speak to you individually, because there are lots of Gideons I'm talking to. People who've made an expertise of a Changanya gospel. Let me explain to you a Changanya gospel, where you take the bread of God, the new revelation of it, and you want to take it back to where you used to make wine. So you're trying to mix where God is taking you with where you used to be, and you want to mix them together. You want to mix Kuriakos with ecclesia. You want to mix unforgiveness with forgiveness. You want to mix love with impatience. You want to mix trusting on God with trusting and relying on people. You want to mix these things, so you're busy trying to hide from Midian, mixing your bread where the winepress is. And you wonder why nothing is happening. You know, people used to think kuchanganya is kuchanganya kwenda club na kwenda church. That's nothing, man. Come on, go to the club. The big changanya is changanyaing your head, where you know what to believe, but you don't live what you believe. You don't live what you believe. Anyway, let me show you something. Now, the angel of the Lord is appearing to you today, and saying to you, the Lord is with you, you mighty man of fearless courage. And Gideon said to him, oh, sir, if the Lord is with us, why is all this befallen us? And where are all his wondrous works which our fathers told us, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian. The Lord turned to him and said, go in this your might, and you shall save Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you? Notice something. God is speaking to a guy, a confused guy, and he's telling him how to conquer, that he's the one to conquer Midian. The guy who's hiding. Gideon said to him, oh Lord, how can I deliver Israel? Behold, my clan is the poorest in Manasseh, and am the least of my father's house. And the Lord said to him, surely I will be with you, and you shall smite the Midianites as one man. Now, notice something. When Gideon says, this is a side note, but I think it's you need to understand. You know, how can I deliver Israel? When he said, behold, my clan is the poorest in Manasseh, he's saying Manasseh is the last among the last kids of the least tribes of Israel. And he says, in that tribe, my clan is the least, and in his father's house he's the least. So he's the least 3 times. And the Lord said to him, surely I will be with you, and shall smite the Midianites as one man. Gideon said to him, if now I have found favor in your sight, then show me a sign. Okay? And I don't want to speak about the signs, but he goes in, he prepares a kid, prepares a sacrifice. Wash your hands. Xavier, want to say hi? Say hi, then go wash your hands. Okay? He presents the gift, and the gift is burnt up. This is not what I want to do. All right, I want to jump to verse 24. Verse 24. Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord, and the Lord and he called it, the Lord is peace. The Lord is peace. To this day it stands in Ophrah and belongs to the Abiezrites. That night the Lord said to Gideon, take your father's bull, the second bull 7 years old, and pull down the altar of Baal that your father has and cut down the Asherah, symbol of the Asherah that stands besides it. Now, where is this? Typically, the Asherah pole is put on a hill, another mountain. Now, I want you to understand something, that every mountain you don't occupy, and I know people teach you about altars, they teach you the wrong thing. I don't want to go into that doctrine, but I want to give you a hint that whichever mountain you don't occupy, whichever mountain you don't go to overcome, becomes the possession and the property of a demon. And I do not have time to explain to you what a demon is, but do not think the way you've been taught in Kuriakos. This is what I want you to understand, that another power, another principality sits at every mountain you've refused to conquer. Underline that. Another power, another principality sits at every mountain you've refused to conquer. Every place you've refused to go to, everything that you've been scared of, there is a power sitting on it. Now notice something. I want you to understand how scared this guy was. Right? And it says, verse 26, and build an altar to the Lord your God on top of this stronghold with stones laid in proper order. And take the second bull and offer your burnt sacrifice with the wood of the Asherah, which you shall cut down. Lots of imageries there. Lots of imageries. Lots of imagery. In other words, until you go to your mountain, remove the principality or the thing that you're scared of, and then rearrange that thing in the order God told you to arrange it, and burn up that God and as a sacrifice. You're doing it wrong. So let me explain something. So let me give you a basic example. There's someone you've refused to forgive because they owe you 10,000 bob, for example. Okay? That mountain you've refused to conquer, you need to come back, and this is what you need to do. You need to take your 10,000 bob and forgive in the right order. Okay? Either by telling the person you've forgiven them, or by writing off the debt, whichever way, and giving it as a sacrifice to God. That's how you conquer that mountain. I don't know whether I'm making sense. I'll give you another example. Your generosity is broken. Mugzo uko hapa. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you guys something. In the Old Testament, there was a rule, twofold rule. Number one is that when you harvested your shamba, the four corners of your shamba, it was a rectangle or a square, you were not allowed to harvest from it. The four corners. So remember that. And then if the people harvesting your shamba were in a line, okay, and they're moving ahead. Now, if they're picking like this in the front with their eyes forward, if they made a step ahead, you were not allowed to turn and pick a head of corn or an ear of wheat behind you. Because what was expected in Israel is there was people behind you called the gleaners, whose job, for them to survive, they needed to pick from the four corners of your shamba and to pick from what your harvesters left behind. Well, let me tell you something. If you build a business and you do not build generosity into it, you are committing a Christian offense. Your business is supposed to be that you leave enough space for people to come and eat crumbs, not crumbs really, not even really leftovers, but for people to help you harvest. In fact, that's the better term. And you see, this dealt with laziness because what happened is this, that instead of people sitting at home waiting for the harvesters to come and bring them some corn, they were sent into the field and they were supposed to harvest with the harvesters. And those who harvested with the harvesters, whatever they collected from the four corners and from the gleaning of the harvest, then they would have something to eat. So why did I tell Mugane this? Because he has a question. Now, why is this an important thing? Because you need to learn generosity. You need to inbuild generosity into your plan. And how is generosity done? Generosity is done by allowing people to work in the field where your harvesters are. So you need to create a field first to be harvested. You need to create a space for gleaners to come. And that's how you build a business in the kingdom. But at the end of the day, that's a mountain you need to climb. Forgiveness, generosity, fellowship. Oh my goodness. You fickle-hearted cowards. Yani you get hurt by one person. Then you say, oh, now I don't feel I belong anymore. Sijui what? Nonsense. Stop it. Please conquer that mountain. Forgive your brothers. Kwani unafikiria you are not tolerated? You wendo unafikiria unanukanga marashi all the time? You know, even when you fart unanuka marashi. So sisi tunakutolerate wewe ukikosea once. Niseme na niseme. Oliver, niseme ama niseme. Oliver amesema niseme. It's nonsensical. How special are you? Neke. Atio, nimekasirika, kwa hivyo nimeenda. Enda kabisa. I'll tell you why. It's in scripture. If you refuse to conquer small mountains, surely where are we going? Midian will keep eating all our food. Hear me correctly. Now, okay, please, when did you become so sensitive? Kila kitu unakach. No, listen. This year, watu wa kukachkach juu ya vitu ndogo. Me, I'm not cancelling you. Yeah, I have resigned. I have done it for 4 years. If you've not learned, shauri yako. Now, listen. Then Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord had told him. But because he was too afraid of his father's household, there comes the fear thing again. And the men of the city to do it by day, he did it by night. And when the men of the city arose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was cast down, and the Asherah was cut down, and that was beside it, and the second bull offered on the altar which had been built. And they said to one another, who has done this thing? And when they searched and asked, they were told, Gideon, son of Joash, has done this thing. Then the men of the city commanded Joash, bring out your son that he may die, for he has pulled down the altar of Baal and cut down the Asherah beside it. Now I want to pause there before I read verse 31. I want you guys to understand something. This season of taking mountains is going to put you in the crosshairs of people who worship the wrong thing. The people who worship money will be pissed at you. The people who worship unforgiveness will be pissed at you. The people who worship greed will be pissed at you. The people who worship kuriakos will be pissed at you. So listen, either you agree that people are going to be angry at you for doing the right thing and do it anyway, even if you got to do it at night, or this journey of conquering Midian will not start. Because God understood something. He understood something very simple. And this is what he was teaching Gideon and is teaching us today. If you cannot make the God of your enemy fall, you cannot face your enemy. If you cannot conquer the God of your enemy, you cannot conquer your enemy. Hear me correctly. If your problem is finance, if your problem is money, if you cannot conquer mammon, you cannot conquer the person who's keeping money away from you. Sijui kama mnanisikia. The problem is not that you have a bad boss. No, no, no. The problem is you've not conquered your boss's God. Kaende. Your enemy is not your brother. Your enemy is unforgiveness. Your enemy is not poverty. Your enemy is you're not generous. Your enemy is not that you're not clever. Your enemy is that you refuse the truth. I don't know whether I'm talking to somebody. So unless you conquer the God of your enemy, you can't conquer your enemy. Which is why if someone is refusing to pay you, the issue is your generosity. It is not their lack of paying. I know this sounds nonsensical, but that's how it works. I'll show you just now. And I've got 10 minutes, so let me try and do this quickly. But Joash said to all who stood against him, will you contend for Baal, or will you save him? He who will contend for Baal, let him be put to death while it is still morning. If Baal is God, let him contend for himself, because one has pulled down his altar. Okay? There's a lot there for you to learn, especially those of you who think you need to defend God. Please stop. Please stop. You're offended on God's behalf. Who told you God is offended? You know, the funny thing is, when God listens to atheists, he listens to people. The Bible literally says he laughs when the wicked make their plans. Sasa God anacheka wewe umejam. Aki. It's very confusing, son. Surely, how does that make sense? Anyway, now notice something. The moment I'm now at verse 33, and I want you to understand how this works. The Asherah pole has gone down, and the Baal statue has gone down. Verse 33, then all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east came together, crossing the Jordan, and camped in the valley of Jezreel. What? Think about it. Gideon destroys their gods in Israel. But these guys know something has changed, so they show up. That's why I keep telling you, you've got to deal with the God of the person before you deal with the person. You've got to conquer their God before you conquer them. You can't worship the same God and expect to be greater than them. And so Gideon calls all these people. You know, he does the fleece test. I'm not going to read it. I'm going to go to verse 7. And I want you to understand something. There are two tests that you're going to go through. Two tests. Test number 1 is, are you afraid? Are you scared? If you're scared, switch off your life, go home. go sleep. This journey is not for you. If you're scared, I repeat, switch off the live, stop listening to Bichachi, go sleep.
Yeah.
Go sleep. Because this journey is for those who've chosen to fight. It's for those who've chosen to face their mountains. It is those who've chosen to leave Egypt. It is those who've taken the time to swallow the bitter pill and do what is right. That's who is journeying next. Hey, okay. If it's too much, you're scared. Gone through 4 years, you're tired. Switch off now. Go rest. Okay? That's test number 1. But just because you are courageous does not mean you're going forward. There's one more test. Let me read verse 3. So now proclaim in the ears of the men and women here listening. I'm in Judges 7. Whoever is fearful and trembling, go back and depart from Mount Gilead. There's a mountain again. Mountains are for kings. Whoever is fearful and trembling, turn back, depart from the mountain. And 22,000 men returned, but 10,000 remained. Then God said to Gideon, hey, these people are too many. But take them down to the water. I'm paraphrasing now because I want to go through many things. Take them down to the water and separate them. And this scripture bugged me because I didn't know what it meant. So there are people who drank water. They took the water, put it in their hands, and drank it. Then there are people who just bent down and drank the water. Test number 2. And Paul is the one, I'm not sure whether it's Paul. But it's called correctly handling the word of truth, the water. How you handle the water, how you handle truth. In other words, let me put it to you in perspective. When you face a problem, do you correctly handle truth, or do you resort to all manner of magic tricks? Do you abandon truth because you are in pain? Do you abandon truth, what you've learned, because things are hard? Do you abandon your mountain because you can't? Do you not know how to handle the water? This is for people who are skillful in handling the word. You've got to have the skill to harness the word. You've got to have the skill to harness the word. This is the season. And so Gideon is left with 300 men. Are you among the 300? Do you have the skill? Are you scared? If you're scared, kana mama yako. Go home. Go home. This journey is not for you. Go home. If you don't know how to handle the word of truth, you want to, you know, the word is a flowing river. Okay? Guys who took the word, took it, made it their own. These other guys in a flowing river were biting into new revelation without ever holding it in their hands. Yani revelation inakupita tu. You refuse to take the word, pause with it, and make it your own. You are an endless sink of revelation, nothing comes out. Kana mama yako Ken. Yes, I couldn't resist it, bro. I couldn't resist it. But that's the truth. Now, I want to show you something. And I want you to understand how you beat Midian. Now, throughout Judges, God is dealing with Gideon's fear. If you are really sending me this sacrifice, God burnt it. He did the fleece thing. If it's cold, if it's wet and dry outside, if it's dry outside, you know those things. He did that. And in Judges 7, God is like, hey, listen, I'm not gonna wait for you to ask me. So listen, I want you to go down and listen to what the Midianites are saying. So of course he goes down and the Midianite has a dream. So verse 13, when Gideon arrived, behold, a man was telling a dream to his comrade. And he said, behold, I dreamt a dream, and behold, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian and came to the tent and struck it so that it fell, and turned it upside down so that the tent lay flat. And his comrade replied, this is nothing else but the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, a man of Israel. Into his hand God has given Midian and all the host. Isn't that interesting? That the Midianite is more scared of you than you are of him. Anyway, it continues. When the Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, he worshipped and returned to the camp of Israel and said, arise, for the Lord has given into your hand the host of Midian. Then they divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put them into the hands of all of them trumpets and empty pitchers of water. Trumpets and empty pitchers of water, with torches inside the pitchers. And he said to them, look at me. Look at me. Then do likewise. When I come to the edge of the camp, do as I do. When they blow the trumpet, I and all who are with me, then you blow the trumpets also on every side, all the camp, and shout for the Lord and for Gideon. So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outskirts of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, when the gods had been changed, and they blew their trumpets and smashed the pitchers that were in their hands. And the 3 companies blew their trumpets and shattered their pitchers, holding the torches in their hands, and in their right hands the trumpets to blow, leaving no chance to use swords. And they cried, the sword of the Lord and Gideon. And they stood every man, and I will show you what these examples mean, because I want to tell you how to beat the Midianite in your life. And they stood every man in his place about the camp, and all the Midianite army ran. They cried out and fled. And when Gideon's men blew the 300 trumpets, the Lord set every Midian sword against his comrade and against all the army, and the army fled, as far as Bath Shita towards Zerera, and as far as the border of Abel Mehola by Tabath. And the men of Israel were called together out of Naphtali and Asher and Manasseh, and they pursued Midian. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down against the Midianites and take all the intervening fords as far as," so that, anyway, they went and routed Midian. Now, I want you to understand something here. When I tell you to go home, I'm not chasing you away. I'm telling you, let those who are willing to fight, go fight. David and Gideon have the same principle. We will go root the enemy. We will bring you back the plunder. We'll call you after they're running to go pick their plunder. But I want you to understand the imagery. The pitcher is for water. So the pitcher contains the word. It contains the revelation. The pitcher represents, again, a vessel. And as you know, you are a vessel. You are vessels of the Holy Spirit. So the Holy Spirit is carrying a torch. And the vessel so far, this is the symbolism, has covered the light. So you've got a light inside you covered by the vessel. Then you've got a trumpet. The answer to dealing with Midian is for you, the vessel, to break so that the light can shine. Get it? In other words, when you go on top of the mountain, the vessel you are has to break so that the light can shine. You have to be willing to break. You have to be willing to do something that breaks you. Forgiving someone, being generous, being nice. Some of you will be broken just by being nice. But you've got to break. And when you break, the light that is hidden in you will shine. But that's not enough. The trumpet represents your shout. The trumpet represents your presence. The trumpet represents you speaking out. In other words, it is time to end your silence. Too many of you know the truth and are too quiet. Too many of you know the truth, but you've taken your light and hidden it under your bed. It's time for the truth, for the light of God to break through. And you are the vessel that needs to break for the light to come. You are that vessel. You are the vessel that needs to tear down the Asherah pole, the Baal pole. You are the vessel that needs to stop this confusion in your life where you know the truth but uko kwa wine press. You are the vessel that needs to stop being fearful. You are that vessel. You are that vessel. You are the vessel that needs to go up the mountain and not be afraid. You are the vessel, again, that needs to be able to catch the water, get it, and drink it. You are that vessel. In other words, you need to use your hands to turn yourself into a vessel that takes the water. It's time to break. But if you're afraid, as I've told you, go home. That's my time, guys. Hope I've helped you. See you guys next week if you're there.